in today's video I'm going to be going through all of my coloured pencil supplies that I use for my coloured pencil drawings. So I'm going to be talking about all the products I use, and I will be leaving them in the description if you want to check them out. So the first thing that I'm going to talk through is all my coloured pencils that I own. So firstly is the Prismacolor pencils, and these are probably the most common starter and beginner pencils that are a bit more high quality because they're really good at blending, they're really soft, but they're also quite affordable. So these are really good if you just want to make that small jump into starting using a bit more high quality materials. These are a really good brand to go for. So I've got the 150 set, but if you're just starting out, you don't have to go for such a large set. One set that I really recommend is the portrait set, and it just has about 24 pencils in, but they're all really good to use for portraits. So I'll also leave a link for that in the description box as well. So here's me just using those Prismacolor pencils. They are really creamy to use, and I like to use them in conjunction with a solvent to blend. So as you can see now, they're really good at blending with a solvent, and once you've used that solvent you can just go back over the top and layer some more. So the Prismacolor pencils are wax based, which means they blend really easily. So the next set of pencils that I have is the Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils, and I love these because they are oil based, which means that they get a really sharp point. So I love using these pencils for fur or animals or anything where I need a high level of detail. So they're really good. As you can see, they get a really sharp point, and what's brilliant is that they maintain that point, whereas with wax based pencils they can go a bit fuzzy quicker. Next is the Caran d'Ache Luminance colour pencils, and these are my favourite for portraits because, again, they're like the Prismacolors, they are wax based and so they blend really easily, but one thing that's different is they are a lot more light fast, which means that they're slightly better quality, and also what I love about them is the quality of the actual pencil. So like the Prismacolors, they're wax based, but they have a slightly harder, more stable casing, which means they're less likely to break. So for this, it is a slightly smaller set. I've got the 76 set, which is the full set, but they have less colours. But what I find with these are that they're all colours that you're really going to use because they're all earthy or skin tones, and they're really natural colours. So I love using these for my portraits, but they're also really good to use for any type of drawing as well. So now onto paper, and there's 3 different types of paper that I like to use. So firstly is the Strathmore Bristol paper, and this is a really great all-round paper, and it's really affordable too. And what I love about this is that you can use it with solvent, or you could also use it if you want to do the burnishing method. So here's just an example of me drawing Hermione, and I'm using this paper and I'm using the burnishing method, and it has enough tooth that it will take multiple layers, but it also means that you get a soft finish as well. So it's a really great all-round paper. So the next paper on my list is the Archer's watercolor paper, and this is brilliant if you want to use solvent. So it's like the Bristol paper in terms of the actual weight and the thickness of the paper, but I like using this specifically for using solvent, but you can use it if you want to burnish as well. But I like this paper as well for my watercolor drawings, so it's just a type of paper that I can use for both. So I used this paper on my recent drawing of this kitten, and I loved it. And again, it will work well with all of the different types of coloured pencils. So that's a really great alternative. It's just slightly on the pricier end of the papers. But it's definitely worth it if you use watercolours as well, because it can be used for both. And finally, my next type of paper is really good if you want a slightly toned paper and you don't want it just a white paper. So this is the Strathmore toned tan paper, and it's really affordable, so it's not too expensive, and it's amazing for cartoons. So I love it because it just makes the cartoons pop, and a lot of other artists use this for their cartoon drawings as well. So here's me just using it to draw Batman, and what I love about it is that it takes the white really well and it just shows up really nicely. And then if you use a white gel pen to outline the cartoon or whatever you're drawing, then it just really makes it stand out. So next is what I actually use to blend my coloured pencils with, and this is the Bestit pencil blend, and this is only available in the UK, I believe, but if you're in other parts of the world there is an alternative, which is the Mona Lisa odorless paint thinner, which I've heard is really good as well at blending coloured pencils, so I'll leave a link as well to where you can get that. So next is this little tool, and I love using this to create little details when I do coloured pencil work, especially when I'm burnishing, because it just lifts off some of the wax pencil. And this is a little craft knife, and it's really cheap. You can just get them for £1 or £2, and this is really good at creating hair or little bits of hair in the eyebrows, or even just details anywhere else in the coloured pencil drawing. And all you have to do is literally just use it to scrape off the layers of coloured pencil to reveal the lighter layers underneath. I particularly like using this with the Caran d'Ache Luminance coloured pencils. So the next supply is just something that I use to store all my colour pencils really neatly, and this is just a storage box with 3 different drawers, and then I just bought 2 of them and stacked them on top of each other. So I like to use these to store some of my coloured pencils and some of my charcoal and just things that I use quite a lot, so they're right there ready to use. So my next supply that I use is not something that I use all the time, but I like to use it if I want to do a base before I go on with coloured pencils. So you might have seen me doing this a few times where I use the Pro markers before I go in with the coloured pencil. And it creates a nice base, and it means that you don't get as much white grain and you don't have to work so hard to fill in all that white grain. So I really like using Pro markers as a base first. I don't apply too much detail with it, I just get some of the general colours blocked in, and then I go and refine and put detail in with the colour pencils. So the next material that I use is some pencil extenders, and these are great if you've got really small pencils like this, which are just really hard to hold on their own, and you don't want to waste them because pencils are really expensive. So you just pop them into these pencil holders, and it means that you've got an extended length that you can hold on and just draw with that. So there's quite a lot of different varieties. So the black one is from Derwent's, and then the other 2 are just cheap ones that I got off Amazon. And so you don't need really expensive ones. It just depends on the shape of the actual pencil extender, and you'll have certain preferences. So I don't really like the Derwent one. I find that metally bit is really annoying, and I don't really feel comfortable holding it. So I much prefer the other ones because they're slightly slimmer. So next is the material that I use to hold down my paper to my drawing board, and this is just some Scotch Magic tape, which you've heard me talk about in my other supply video for my watercolor supplies. So I use this for all of my different types of drawings and paintings, and I just like it because it fixes it to the drawing board, which means it doesn't move around, and it also prevents any warping in terms of when you're painting or using solvent. Okay, so those are all the materials that I like to use for my coloured pencil drawings, and I'm just going to run through some little ideas if you're unsure what materials to get based on what you might want to draw. So firstly, if you're planning on drawing portraits and you're a beginner and not sure what to get, then for portraits I recommend going for the Prismacolor portrait set, like I mentioned earlier, because it'll be really good at having just those general colours that you need for skin tones, and Prismacolor's a really good brand because it will be wax based and easy to blend, but not too expensive. I also recommend the Strathmore Bristol vellum paper because it's a nice all-round paper and it can take solvent as well as burnishing in multiple layers. And for portraits, I definitely recommend using the burnishing technique over just using solvent. So next is if you're not too keen on drawing portraits, but you really want to draw some wildlife and animals. So for that, I recommend going for the Faber-Castell Polychromos because, like I said earlier, they get a much sharper and finer point, which means you can do fur strokes really nicely without getting really fuzzy edges. Not that you get really fuzzy edges with the other ones, it's just a bit harder to maintain a really sharp point with them. I also recommend going for the Arches watercolor paper because for doing animals I find it easier to use solvent to blend and layer and use that to layer the fur rather than going and burnishing. So if you want to use solvent, definitely head for the Arches watercolor paper, but you could still use the Bristol vellum one if you wanted to. It's just it'll just take slightly less layers. And finally, if you want to do cartoons or anime or more manga type style, then you might want to go for the Prismacolor coloured pencils because they have a lot of vibrant colours and they're also wax based. Also head for the Tone Tan or the Bristol Vellum depending on your preferences, but the Tone Tan does really make your drawings pop. And again, I'd use the burnishing technique unless you want to use the solvent, but for things like cartoons, it's probably best to go for the burnishing. Anyway guys, that's it for today's supply video. I hope you enjoyed it and found some things useful or found some new materials to try. And remember that I've linked all my materials in the description below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new to my channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and I will see you in my next video. Bye!